Hello, and welcome to the Anxiety RX podcast. I am your host, Dr. Russell Kennedy, a physician who suffered from crippling anxiety for decades before I actually found my own way of healing myself. And today I have with me Craig Goldberg, who's a technologist and certified vibro-acoustic therapy practitioner on a quest to heal and help humanity achieve a deeper sense of inner calmness through the use of sound and vibration. His work is backed by 40 plus years of research, and as a patented inventor, he is constantly exploring new ways to help people reduce stress and anxiety, me too, heal, and transform their lives for the better. Hello, Craig.
Good to see you, Doc. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Like I said before we started, I've got some issues with my mom these days. You know, she's 90 and she's struggling a little bit. And, yesterday I went in to see her at the place that she lives, and she didn't look good at all. But it's funny, 2 weeks ago, I saw her and she was just looking like she was on death's door. And then 2 days ago, I go in there and she's got her makeup on and she's eating lunch. So she's got those strong Scottish genes, right? Like the never say die Scottish genes, man. She just keeps coming back. She's had 2 hip fractures, pneumonia, and she's like Boris the Blade from Snatch. She just keeps going.
Just keeps coming back.
Yeah.
Well, and look, and it's going to ebb and flow like
Yeah.
that. She's going to have good days, going to have bad days, going to have high energy days, going to have low energy days, going to have days where she's like, I want to put on my makeup and I want to have lunch. There's going to be other days where she's like, I want to stay in bed.
Yeah.
I mean, I have those days at 45.
Yeah. And I do too. So it is one of those things that, I think we look for consistency so much as human beings, and especially from our parent, that's what, as our parents get older, the consistency was once there is not there anymore. And I think there is this psychological deep longing in us to have a parent that was connected to us if we were lucky enough to have that, and then to kind of hang on to it. There's a childlike part of us that just wants to hang on to that connection that we had with them. And then when I see her fail, it's kind of like, okay. And I've seen lots of people fail as a medical doctor for sure, but it's different when it happens to your own mom.
Well, look, that consistency that you talked about, it as you were saying that, I was thinking reliability. And as I was thinking of that reliability, you think of those people, those grounded, rooted, reliable, human beings that are just ready to rock and roll. And as we get older, that consistency, that reliability isn't there. And all of a sudden you reach for something that you could do yesterday and you can't do it as efficiently or as effectively as you could today. And we call that getting old.
Yeah.
And I think what's really remarkable about the world we're living in and the time that we chose to be on this planet Earth, you and I, and everybody that's listening to this right now, is that what we're going to see by way of longevity, anti-aging, and living a healthy life deep into our 80s, 90s, and I think into our hundreds consistently in our lifetime is something that is really exciting for me. Not really the purpose of this call, but I think it is something that for me adds a lot of light at the end of the tunnel, pun and figuratively and
right.
Relatively put, that shows me that towards the end of our lives, I think we are going to have very vibrant and very full lives going into our 80s, 90s, and into our hundreds.
We certainly have that option these days. Although, with these podcasts, I love just going whatever direction we're going in.
Yeah.
It just seems like we're getting more separate though, Craig. Like it just seems like we've never lived in an age that had less war, less famine, less creature comforts. And yet we are as separate and as isolated and as lonely and anxious and depressed society as we've ever been. If we look at North America, we're a pretty depressed, dopamine-driven, anxious society. And if you look at Mexico, even though they don't have a lot of, the basic creature comforts that we do, they're a lot happier in general. And, so why do you think that is?
Well, so I immediately, as soon as you said war, which I agree, there's multiple wars that are happening as we're recording this podcast right now. It takes 2 to tango. War is a form of connection. Interestingly enough, you are connected to that who's firing at you and protected and who you're protecting. So there is a layer of connection there. I mean, even I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins, and when you go to his events and you start to talk about the 6 basic needs, that connection can be somebody standing in front of you threatening your life. You are connected to the person in which is threatening your life, and the person that is threatening your life feels connected to you because you are so focused on them at that exact moment. So there's a lot of different reasons and ways that we gain that connection. At the same time, I agree with you. Here in the United States, stress and anxiety is overrun in our society, and we are more and more disconnected from one another. We are spending more and more time staring at screens and immersed in social media, which is really only a one-sided connection where you're connected to the people you're watching, not a two-sided connection. Um, it is a simpler life. I've logged a lot of hours south of the border in Mexico. I love it down there.
Mm.
And one of the things I love about it is you're outside in nature. The weather is beautiful. Most of the time you're at the beach or someplace where you are enjoying, being outside, even in the jungle or inside in the desert. And it is a simpler life.
Yeah.
Um,
And enjoying your physiology too, which is, I guess, the work that you do. It's just you help people enjoy their physiology more. Because I think what happens with a lot of us is that we get into this feeling of dysphoria or anxiety or whatever. And then our brain, which is just a meaning making, make sense machine, just gives us all these stories to confirm that we're not happy, that we don't have this, we don't have that. There's, when you're depressed, everything looks horrible. When you're anxious, everything looks scary. And I think if we can, one of the premises of my book is that we should stop trying to heal anxiety using our thinking cognitive brains, because it's not a thinking cognitive problem. It is a subcortical, below the level of the cortex, emotional feeling issue that gets reflected by our words much more than our words are the ultimate cause of the anxiety. So when we go with the body first and we regulate the body, it's amazing how much better your thoughts get.
Yeah. Look, just to kind of feed off of what even we were just talking about in the previous question, we are the beautiful picture of behind you, that connection that we yearn for to other human beings. And more people are working from home. I'm sitting here at my desk in my house. I'm very lucky. My wife is home throughout the day, so I get to see and interact with her on a regular basis. My daughter is at school all day. Um, I'm not in a hustling, bustling office like I once was in New York City 15 years ago, 20 years
Mm.
ago. I'm not at a nightclub or a restaurant, which again, lots of people around. And instead, I am sitting secluded. I talk on the phone to a lot of people. I'm fortunate in that I'm on Zoom with a lot of people. So I'm seeing people and connecting with people, but I'm not in the same presence of feeling somebody else's energy. And I think a lot of people are feeling that as well. And we yearn for that connection, and we yearn for skin on skin contact, the dopamine and the hormones that are released when we get that oxytocin release as well. So I think there's a lot that's contributing to that. You brought something up that's very powerful, which is the body. The mind controls, the mind controls the breath controls the mind controls the body. So going back to breath work and breathing, I
Mm.
think there's a lot of ways that we can get out of our head so that we can get into our heart and we can get into our body. And that it is a great way to combat stress and anxiety, which is why vibro-acoustic therapy, sound and vibration, is such a powerful modality, which is what we do at In Harmony. And we do help people to reinforce the mind-body connection and get further into their physical body.
Yeah, I mean, I think what happens with a lot of people, specifically in my field, anxiety, is that their mind gets separated from their body and their adult self gets separated from their child self. So the child self usually goes through some sort of trauma that wasn't resolved when they were younger.
Yeah.
They didn't have a parent that they could co-regulate with, and that alarm stays in their body. And that alarm reflects through the mind through this process called interoception. So your mind is always reading your internal and external environment, and it reads your body through this process called interoception. So if it detects there is this angst, this fear, this energy of unsafety in your body, your brain, which is a meaning making make sense machine, will start making up reasons to evaluate and make sense of this uncomfortable feeling. So it will make up worries and warnings and worst case scenarios based on the fact that your body feels that way. And you don't actually heal anxiety by changing your thinking. You change anxiety, you heal anxiety by changing the way you feel and learning how to feel safe in that feeling. Because a lot of people with anxiety don't feel safe feeling safe because as a child, when they felt safe, the rug got pulled out from under them.
How many thoughts a day do we have?
I don't know. Like this, I have an issue with this too, because it's like, how do you figure this out? Like, how do you figure out, like some people say 90,000 thoughts a day, like, and then there's the subconscious part and then there's the conscious part. And are you just counting the conscious part of your thinking? So
All
it's
right.
like,
So
I don't know how many.
This is why I asked you the question, because I had a feeling you had an opinion on it, and I don't know the answer to it either, right?
I do.
Let's call it somewhere between 40,000 and 90,000 thoughts a day.
Okay.
And they say, just to pick a number for I mean, even if it's 10,000 thoughts a day,
Sure.
it's still a lot, right? And I do believe they say about 90% of them are repetitive thoughts from the day before, which I could see, right? I just know from my own perspective, my own life, I'm thinking about a lot of the same things every single day as I drive my daughter to school through the same route. Do I make a left here? Do I make a right here? Right? Like basic thoughts. A lot of them are repetitive. That negative self-talk is a real thing. And when left to our own devices, when left secluded, alone, not around other people to input our thoughts, the ego, which is designed to keep us alive and to look for threats, is constantly looking for threats. Mm-hmm. It's not looking for sunshine and rainbows. It's looking for survivability. It's looking for the errors or the omissions from the patterns that we see every single day. And we need to manage that. And it's one of the things I love about meditation. It's one of the things I love about a gratitude practice, visualization. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of different aspects that feed into what we do at In Harmony. But at its foundation, it's about tending to the internal garden. It's about helping yourself to frame the visual of what you want to see and where you want to go, and tend to that inner garden, to tend to those thoughts, to keep them positive, to keep them on the up and up, to keep them focused on what you want instead of what you don't have or don't want. And I think that's a big part of depression and anxiety as well.
Yeah, I do too. There's a great book that I read recently called The Gap and the Gain, and it's mostly for entrepreneurs. And it's about when you're feeling angst, when you're feeling negatively, you've fallen into what's called the gap, which is usually you're looking at the future with some sort of negative viewpoint. And what they say in this book is that, look to your past, always measure backwards, always see where you were. So I was going to ask you, what's your life now, being a New York City guy? And now where do you live now, Craig?
Las Vegas.
So, okay. I was going to say, you've gone from this, sort of hustle bustle to Vegas. Do you live right in Vegas, or do you live in?
I'm about 10 minutes off the. 10 minutes off the strip. I mean, I'm in the suburbs for Vegas, right? Sure. Like I'm far enough out of the city that it's quiet at night and there's no bright lights. I mean, it's a bright city, but I'm away from the hustle and the bustle of the strip.
So, how is your life different in the last 15 years?
Look, I went from working 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. 7 days a week to now living. I have a 4-year-old. I'm married. I have a business. I live a relatively normal life. That said, I'm getting ready to load into EDC, which is 3 nights of chaos at the racetrack up north. 400,000 attendees. We're bringing our technology there to create a wellness experience for the artists and their guests. So it's a work trip, but I am gearing up for 3 nights in a row of 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. Chaos and tearing my body apart a little bit. So, but again, after 10 years of working in New York City nightlife, my body is conditioned to work from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m.
Right.
Granted, I sleep now at night when my daughter isn't waking me up at 3 o'clock in the morning like she did last night. But it's to your point. I think to your point, I am a product of that lifestyle that I developed and conditioned myself to in New York City. First of all, I moved from New York City to San Diego. If you're not familiar with California, everything closes at 2 a.m. and really everything closes down by 10 p.m. if not midnight.
Right.
And I had a hard time in San Diego. I wound
Mm.
up coming to Vegas a lot because I was craving. I'm a night owl. I do
Mm.
better at night. And now I'm in bed if I can be in bed with my daughter at 9 p.m. or 8:30 p.m., I do it. And any chance I get to put my daughter down, my wife literally, as I'm walking into her bedroom, she's like, can you stay awake? And I'm like, I don't think so. I'm probably just going to fall asleep next to her and then crawl into my bed at 10 and that'll be my night. But at the same time, it's the conditioning is still there.
Mm.
And I still enjoy, look, at night, the phone's not ringing.
Mm-hmm.
At night, I get some of my best creative work done because there's
Right.
no distractions. So a time and a place for everything. But I think to your point, the reason I love it here in Vegas is because it's a 24-hour town.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of crave that from my days in living in New York City.
And what took you to create this sort of sound healing environment for yourself?
So that is also very much bred in the conditioning that I had in New York City. I was stressed and anxious in New York, and I had no idea exactly the depth of that stress and anxiety because I was so heavily medicated. And I say medicated because I was drinking alcohol 7 days a week, which is a depressant,
Mm-hmm.
which affects the brain for 72 hours. I mean, I don't drink alcohol anymore. I don't party the same way that I used to, but I realized that
Are they going to kick you out of Vegas? What's going to happen?
I mean, there's ways to keep the card and
Oh,
still
sure.
maintain,
I'm sure.
my membership. But to that point, I was heavily medicated. And I was drinking alcohol 7 days a week, literally from the moment I woke up in the afternoon, because I was working at night, until I went to, there was alcohol included, and party drugs and everything else that went along with it. It wasn't until I moved out to California, I started to clean up my lifestyle, started to realize that I cut out gluten, which cuts out a lot of beer, obviously.
Right.
This was 12 years ago when they didn't have as many gluten-free beer options and that sort of thing. But once I started to slow down and I learned about sound therapy, music therapy, these incredible and talented acoustic instrument players that do sound baths and sound journeys. And I just fell in love with the modality. What I recognized is that the body is basically a huge antenna. We're constantly picking up different frequencies that we are presented with and coming into and out of what's called harmonic resonance with those around us and those frequencies around us. And when you're presented with a gong or a crystal bowl or a didgeridoo or any of these vibratory acoustic instruments, your body comes into harmonic resonance with that frequency. Most of the time, that frequency hovers around 10 hertz. And that is this very special frequency that is the resonant frequency for the brain, the resonant frequency for the body, and really the resonant frequency for the planet Earth, which is measured as the Schumann resonance, which is a whole bunch of other things to dive down. But when you're drifting into that alpha brainwave state, which is that 10 hertz frequency, your body is in harmony with the world around you. And that's when we find rest and relaxation. When you're stressed and anxious, as you know, the body only has one response to stress, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, nutritional, relational, financial. That stress is that sympathetic nervous system response, kicks up cortisol, increases adrenaline, turns off maintenance tasks in the body, and diverts that energy into saving your life. If you're sitting in that fight or flight mode for 8 hours a day, 5 days, 7 days a week, month after month, year after year, your body is not taking the time it needs to maintain itself. And when I found these sound baths, to bring it all kind of together, when I found these sound baths and I felt the relaxation, I fell asleep. Okay. I woke up 45 minutes, an hour later, whatever it was. And I felt like my body had been wrung out. Like I felt clean and clear and my cognitive ability was stronger. I just felt like I was a better human. And I really gravitated towards it. And then being an audiophile, I wanted to create this experience on tap. I have crystal bowls here, but I have to sit there and play it. And because I'm sitting there playing it, I'm stuck in that beta brainwave. I'm not drifting into alpha and theta and into these deeper brainwave states of relaxation. So when you lay down on or sit on my meditation cushion or lay down on the sound lounge and you push play on a music meditation, you are being taken into that deeper meditative state, that alpha, theta, delta, or gamma brainwave state. And that's when relaxation is able to be felt, and rejuvenation it just comes alive in every cell in your body. So I got hooked as soon as I had that first sound experience, and I recognized, now obviously I've learned a lot about its impact on your physiology, our anatomy, our neurology, but yeah, I just fell in love with the way that I felt after these sound experiences. And now I want to share that with the world through our relaxation furniture, through our music meditations, our app, our record label, our freebies on YouTube. And I want to
Nice.
help people reach those deeper depths of relaxation using sound and vibration.
So relaxation furniture, that's intriguing. What is that?
Sure. So we use a technology. It's called a tactile transducer. For those that are just listening, I'm holding it up. It's a disc. It's powered by speaker cable, black and red, just like you see through the terminals.
Mm.
And embedded inside our furniture are tactile transducers and speakers. And
Mm.
tactile transducer, basically, there's a magnet in here that oscillates back and forth. 20 oscillations per second is a 20 hertz frequency. And we can then program music to be transferred into vibration. And when you're sitting on our furniture, you are feeling the vibration. It's like sitting on a speaker, right? It's a lot more
Mm.
complicated than that, but it's also just as basic and as simple as that. So we are translating music. And by the way, you can listen to anything you want through our technology. So Dark Side of the Moon sounds and feels absolutely incredible. House music, reggae, hip hop, it all sounds and feels absolutely incredible. The deeper the bass line, the better. And by the way, music moves you. Whatever your music is, it moves you, and it feels amazing, and it can be very therapeutic. So too can our music meditations. But our relaxation furniture includes speakers, amplifiers, and tactile transducers in it to translate sound, music, and frequency directly to the body.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. A lot of times people are trying to meditate or whatever. And to me, it seems like that's a lot of hard work, learning to meditate
Can be,
initially.
yeah.
So having something that kind of helps you along in that pathway, I can see people starting with sound and going, "Yeah, I really like this. I'm going to continue on with meditation because I can kind of create a version of this within my own mind without having external sound to do it." Because I see it as kind of a way of introducing people to feeling okay. Because one of the things in my work that I run up
Yeah.
against is that people don't feel safe feeling safe because
Yeah.
when they were a child, there was a period of a calm, especially with alcoholic families. There's a period of calm, then there's the binge, then there's the blowout, then there's the apology, and then there's the feeling of calm again. But it's always followed by some sort of catastrophic event. So they get operantly conditioned to believe that calm is actually going to be followed by danger.
Calm before the storm,
And it's
sure.
just when I get people into vibration type therapies, a lot of them will fall asleep because it's a form of dissociation, because it brings you into your body. And if your body is holding this old trauma, you're not going to want to stay there for very long.
Yeah.
But it gives you the opportunity to be able to start to process this stuff, start to be able to feel safe, feeling safe. And that practice, I think, is invaluable because we can't heal from a place where we don't feel safe. And that's one of my issues with psychotherapy and that kind of thing, is like when you're talking about what traumatized you or what is traumatizing you, there's this feeling in psychology that you're somehow metabolizing it or processing it. And yeah, cognitively through prefrontal cortex and sensory motor kind of places in our brain, we do process part of it, but we don't process enough of it to really give us that subconscious, subcortical structures: pons, medulla, amygdala, insula. These are the places in the brain that hold those old fearful programs. And unless we stimulate them somehow, unless we activate them somehow and get them to show themselves, we can't change them.
Yeah. We say on our website, say goodbye to a distracted mind, say hello to a relaxed existence.
Hmm.
And the way that we say goodbye to a distracted mind, interestingly enough, is by distracting it with music, with vibration. Um, the the mind interacts with the world around us through the five senses, And when you are laying or sitting on our furniture, every mechanoreceptor in your skin, which is how we feel vibration and changes in pressure, how we touch, is sending the same signal to the brain as the auditory nerve. So there's a harmony between the auditory nerve and the sense of touch, or the sense of hearing and the sense of touch. And that is enough to distract the mind, to allow it to relax, to get it enough not focused on whatever it was focused on, to break the pattern and allow it to actually relax. And once it starts to relax, it remembers what it feels like to relax. To your point, we serve two main audiences with our meditation cushion. Folks like me, that if you said, Craig, it's really a good idea for you to meditate, you should sit over there and quiet the mind. 8 years ago, I would have laughed at you like, Doc, you're out of your mind. I'll just be thinking about all the things I'm not doing, all the things I should be doing, and I would not be getting the benefits of meditation. But if I'm sitting over there on a meditation cushion, I'm listening to frequencies that I'm feeling. I am distracted by the music and being guided into a deeper meditative state. Now, all of a sudden, my brain has the neural pathways developed to reach a meditative state. And I know how to get there because I've been guided there. And it's not like I develop a crutch and I need that meditation cushion and I need that music meditation to do it the next time.
Right.
The neural pathways there, like a needle in a record, my brain knows how to get me there. And now I can call on that as needed. I feel stress and anxiety come on. I take a deep breath. I go inward. I achieve that parasympathetic nervous system response because I've practiced it. Or if whatever is happening is so intense, I need to go back to the meditation cushion, or I need to open up the app and listen to the music meditation that I was listening to so that I can get that extra push. I have access to it and I can do that. There's a lot at play here, especially when you get a talented practitioner and provider like you using your tech. Absolutely.
Yeah, because, for anxiety, like I said earlier, it's a separation of mind and body. And I think vibration brings those two things together. And it's also a separation of your adult self and your child self. The child that didn't get their needs met, that wasn't seen, heard, open to, loved, defended, protected, that kind of thing. And I can see being in this kind of semi-meditative, relaxed state, being able to have a deeper conduit and connection with that younger version of us, because that younger version of us does hold a lot of our pain. And it does take a really strong conduit, a really strong connection to that younger self, because one of the reasons people have anxiety and it stays with them for so long is because as we grow into adulthood, we separate from that child that was in us. And that separation creates a tremendous amount of alarm. And the child in us is screaming at us to connect with them through this alarm. So we never actually get into this sort of calm, relaxed, safe state so that we can resolve this mind-body disconnect and this adult-child self-disconnect. So putting ourselves in a state where we in a way, we kind of have to relax, opens up that. And I can see almost like being a hypnotic suggestion. It's like, can you connect with the younger version? Because what's going on with me is, putting someone in like a sound environment like this, having them come into parasympathetic, come into this place where their mind and body are connected. And then, bringing a picture of themselves when they were like 7, 8, 12 years old and going, hey, can you connect with this part of you? Can you do this? Because it's so difficult to connect with that child without having some sort of stimulus that puts us in. I mean, they have neurofeedback, they have all this other stuff, but I think this is just so much simpler and more straightforward. I can see this really being integrated into like somatic therapy.
So, it's really wild. You can use music to reconnect to the child within, because I can ask you, hey, what year were you 12? Right. What was the music that was being played on the radio that you were being exposed to, intentionally or not intentionally, right? Sure. Like I get that a 12-year-old is probably listening to different music than an 18-year-old in that same genre. Maybe not. Certainly different then than it was now.
Sure.
One of our very talented vibro-acoustic therapy practitioners that I work with on a regular basis, his name is John Hill, and he uses our technology as part of recovery in a recovery center. Yeah. And he does 8 hours a day, 1 hour sessions. And he has somebody on the sound lounge for an hour and goes through a series of different music meditations as well as popular music. He actually maintains a vibro-acoustic friendly playlist on Spotify for us. And one of his questions is, what year did you turn 21? And just by you saying, you know, it was 2001 for me, I think 2002, something like that. And he'll go into his archives and he'll find a song that feels amazing, that was popular that year, and he'll play it, and instantaneously you are back to that version of yourself in a very magical way. I remember where I was, the car I was driving, you know, that beautiful summer day when I was thumping that particular track. Like, really remarkable how easy it becomes when you have that reference, and that and again, just sound, music, vibration, all of it is bringing you right back to where you were.
Yeah, music is like smell like that too. I mean,
Yes,
smell
it's
is
the limbic system.
smell is the only sense that doesn't get pre-processed by the thalamus, this sort of area of the brain that's kind of like the central switchboard of the brain.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering how the thalamus deals with sound vibration that it's not used to, because the thalamus kind of is a translator. So it translates what we feel, see, hear, and touch into something that our cortical brain can use. So I just wonder because it's with vibration, there isn't anything specific there that it's using. I mean, it is changing our brainwave frequency and that kind of thing too. So that's, you know, as a neuroscientist, I kind of look at when you talk about how this stuff works, I'm trying to figure out, okay, how does this really actually affect us? And then how does it affect the cortical mind? How does it affect the prefrontal cortex? How does it affect the posterior cingulate, the part of our brain that kind of is self-referential, the part of our brain that has this inner critic associated with it, or ego? How does sound change that, or make it more open to be changed?
Yeah. Look, you're asking all the questions that I get to ask. Really, like, I just searched because there's a study that I was just reading, possible mechanisms for the effects of sound and vibration on human health, and it's it's literally talking about the thalamus and its impact on recognizing sound and vibration.
Mm-hmm.
I'll share it with you. It's
Sure.
an interesting read. But this is the stuff that I'm looking at on a regular basis, and you kind of hit the nail on the head. Outside of going to a concert, outside of going to a nightclub or a restaurant that's playing loud music, unless you've got a car with a sound system in it, and if you're that guy, and then you've had that for a long time, right? Since our teenage years, probably. Mm-hmm. You've been presenting the body with sound and frequency, and more importantly, you've been presenting the body with hearing the same frequencies that it's feeling. And that's part of the magic of our technology, is that we're doing it without the intensity of 4, 5, 8, 10, 15,000 watts of power, mm-hmm. Or a speaker projecting that frequency and that sound wave onto your body, but instead you're laying on it. So I'm doing it with 200 watts, and it's just way less power than thousands of watts that you'd see in a nightclub. Or the main stage at EDC this weekend has 500,000 watts, 500,000 watts of power on it. Okay. Again, to your point, it's not very often that the mind is perceiving through the 5 senses the same signals it's hearing through the mechanoreceptors of what it's feeling. Mm-hmm. And I think there is a magic there. We're doing science and research on this now. I don't have anything yet, but I will. Yeah. And I think that this is part of the magic of vibro-acoustic therapy, is that you are hearing the same things that you are feeling. And this is what creates what I call a 3-dimensional, fully immersive sound experience. When you're laying on our technology or sitting on our technology, listening to music meditation, or any popular music for that matter, it feels as though you're inside the music. It feels as though you are surrounded by the music. And that to me is a very magical feeling. That to me is what helps from a therapy perspective for you to break those patterns, go within, turn off the outside world, drift into an alpha or a theta brainwave state, delta or gamma for that matter as well. Right. And begin to restore, rejuvenate. There's a lot of folks that are listening that are like, I don't sleep at night. Can't sleep at night. I have a 4-year-old, so I don't sleep at night because she woke up last night at 3:00 in the morning and had a leak, and right. But there's people that don't have those distractions and don't get good sleep at night. Right. And all it takes is one night of not great sleep to throw a wrench in your entire week, let alone being able to say something like, I haven't slept well in years.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And how detrimental that can be to your overall health and wellness. So having access to our technology through a practitioner, through one of our affiliates, through owning it and having it in your own home, or just streaming our frequencies through a Bluetooth speaker, can help to regulate the nervous system, can help to give you that deep sleep, that deep rest, so that you can charge forward. It's a great book, The Power of Full Engagement, in which they basically talk about our downtime is as important as our uptime.
Mm.
And the more efficient and effective we can be at giving the body time to rest, the more powerful and strong we can be when it's time for us to go.
Yeah. And, and Andrew Huberman talks about stuff like this too, about how we learn.
Yes.
It's better to sort of learn for 6 minutes, take 2 minutes off, and then learn for another 6 minutes than it is to try and learn for 60 minutes at a time. We need that downtime. We need that sort of time to integrate. And integration is such a key process in neurology and in psychology to some extent. So integration is basically defined as taking disparate parts and making them into a functional whole. And so often when I see people with trauma is they have these disparate parts. They have these beliefs about themselves that I'm bad, I don't deserve anything, I'm not worthy or whatever, these disparate parts that are kind of hanging around, and they're causing a lot of interruption in harmonic frequency through the brain, through the body. So when you unify that with this vibration like this, the resonance that comes from that, and I was thinking about simple harmonic resonance from my physics back in university, that the resonance that comes from that, where it pulls everything together and it's all polarized in one direction, allows us to see things in a different way without all these little speakers, if you will, kind of telling us, oh, you're not worthy, oh, you're this, or you're that.
Quiet
When you
the
pull
mind.
that resonance together and you experience that resonance, you experience that wholeness together, it's I'm sure perceived in the brain and the body as a sense of safety.
Yes. Yeah. The you kind of you hit the nail on the head.
I'm good at this today.
When it comes to it, really, it's really awesome. Look, the body is an antenna. We're constantly coming into and out of harmonic resonance with the things that we're presented with, the thoughts, the patterns, the experiences that are around us. And when we sync up what we're hearing and what we're feeling, that's when the body begins to relax, and then it remembers that feeling, and it can go right back there to my point earlier. The mind,
and I think that's what happens in the brain too. I think that's what happens in the brain is when we get into these theta rhythms, like these deep, deep rhythms, it's like the whole system has no choice but to slow down, because we live in this society that's just very, very quick. It's very dopamine driven.
Yes.
Our smartphones are killing us because we're not actually giving our brains a break. We're going from one dopamine hit to another, to another, to another. We're burning out the ventral tegmental area, the place that makes dopamine in our brains,
Yes.
substantia nigra, all this kind of stuff. We're not giving ourselves a chance to, experience slowness, because when we experience slowness and we slow down, especially the population I deal with, their trauma comes up. So we're always running to alcohol. We're running to some sort of addiction to kind of avoid that stillness. And I think when you create this resonance in people, it's a form of stillness.
Yeah. So when you're in that stillness and surrounded by sound and frequency, it gives you an opportunity to handle it differently. You begin to look back. Look, I tell people all the time that I selfishly run this company so that I have access to the technology that we create. I use it every day. It's amazing. My family uses it every day. My daughter uses it every day. She's 4. Okay. When I get to reflect and look back and think about the traumatic experiences that I've had, I get to do so when I'm on the sound lounge through a different lens. It's not the lens of I'm remembering what happened to me. It's a lens of I am processing what happened and pulling lessons from it and looking at it underneath a different lens and a different lens and a different lens. And it affects and impacts my life differently after that session than it did before. And I think, to your point, there is something said, I don't know how we test this or scientifically get after it, but there is something that I can tell you very anecdotally from just using my technology on a regular basis. When I don't know what my session is going to be, and I just know that every day I like to close out my night with a sound lounge session, sometimes I reflect on the day. Sometimes I reflect on something as a child. Sometimes I reflect on a thought that I had a few days earlier that I haven't thought about since.
Mm.
And I dwell on that for 20 minutes. Other times I'm thinking about what other friends and family are going through and ways that I can help and assist in what they're doing. I keep a journal next to my sound lounge. And very often I wake up even in the middle of a music meditation and I'm like, I got to write this down. I don't want to forget it. And I have these very deep learnings, if you will, and perspectives that I gain on different experiences that I've had in this life.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, we are mind, body, and spirit. And as a physician and a neuroscientist, I'm fairly good at the mind and the body. The spirit stuff, because I was trained as a medical doctor, is less forefront for me. But I'm realizing, as I do more work with people and my own anxiety and that sort of stuff, the spirit probably plays the biggest role in healing. So anytime that you can align yourself and feel some resonance with yourself, you actually experience spirit. And when spirit is something that we can't quantify, which is, I think we're in the society now where everything's got to be scientific, everything's got to have the scientific explanation. And most things that actually heal you from a psychological perspective can't be reduced. They can't be put into a position where you can say, oh, this brainwave is healing. This particular thing is healing.
Yeah.
A lot of it comes into the realm of spirit. And I think when we align with ourselves, when we're resonant with ourselves, we have this conduit, we have this connection with spirit. And that is what really allows us to heal. And this is why I think, most scientific things, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, most scientific approaches to anxiety, depression, eating disorders, personality disorders, OCD, all this kind of stuff, it doesn't work fully. It works initially because it works on the cognitive part of us, but it doesn't actually allow us to experience that spirit that heals ourselves. And it's really about having the agency and the power and the confidence to be able to heal yourself that allows this to be sustaining. If you're relying on a supplement or you're relying on a doctor or whatever, you really have to get to this place where it's me that's doing it. I'm the one that's in charge of this. I'm the one that's healing. And I think it's one of those things where the more resonance we can get within ourselves, the more we can see that. And the less resonance we have, the more we're kind of grasping for this sort of dopamine-based, scientifically driven kind of evidence-based therapy.
Well said. I tell people all the time, look, you control you. And there is no talk about the victim mentality and what's happening. The reality is you control you. You control how you're going to show up. You control the emotional state. I know that's difficult to wrap your head around sometimes, but the reality is we do control us. When people first get access to our technology and download our music meditations app, I get the question a lot, like, what music meditation is good for this? What's good for that? And the reality is we're all different. We're all at different places in life. Exactly. And there is no good frequency or bad frequency. Certainly we've identified paths and sequences and protocols, if you will, of where to start and where to finish. But the reality is you can't go wrong with any of our music meditations.
Right.
And you just start where you intuitively think to start, and you're right. I don't believe people ask a lot of times, I get the question like, are there bad frequencies? And I go, no, I don't think there are. I don't think there's any bad frequencies. I think there are disharmonious frequencies with the individual or the person or the experience of where you're at, but there is no bad one frequency for all people.
And even those disharmonious frequencies too will probably bring up an issue that you weren't previously aware of, that now you can do something about. Now you can. It brings it up into the level of conscious awareness. And it's like, oh, I didn't really know that was really playing such a huge role in my life. So even the disharmonious frequencies, that's what I tell people when I work with them too, is like, you can't do this wrong. Like
Yeah.
you're always going to learn something from it. Like,
Yeah.
and the other thing that I wanted to ask you, and we're running out of time a little bit here, but are people using the sound frequency in combination with, say, the psychedelics
Yeah.
or with ketamine or that kind of
Yes.
thing?
Yes, all the above. I just got back from PsychCon, which was here in Las Vegas for the first time. I was at Meet Delic back in 2001. I was at Wonderland. I was at Psychedelic Science in Denver last summer. Our technology is at all of these events, pairs really well with plant medicine, pairs really well. We work with a number of ketamine clinics around the country. There's a lot of science there. We help with set and setting, which I was
Mm-hmm.
actually alluding to as you were talking about using sound and vibration to create safety. That absolutely is a big deal when it comes to a big conversation in the psychedelic world, which is set and setting mindset and the setting, the physical setting of where you're sitting. Um, and, um, and, and, and you touched on something else, which was integration, which obviously is important work, not just after a medical appointment or experience, but also after a psychedelic experience. That integration is of the utmost importance. Reflecting on that experience is something that in this go, go, go world, we don't do very often.
No.
And I use the sound lounge as part of an integration for my day.
Yeah.
If I get on it at the end of the day, I can reflect on my day and I can pull out of the day what I need to and take the time to slow down to think about, hey, what did I learn from that? What did I gain
Mm.
from that? What do I want to do again? And what do I want to do differently next time? And I think that's a really important part of life.
Yeah, I do too. And I think too, on top of that, on top of those conscious cognitive prefrontal awarenesses, there will be a sense almost again of spirituality, of things that I didn't know, I don't know consciously, but now I feel physically. And I think that's the combination. Like when people are so um, disaffected by life these days, I think their mind and their bodies are so disconnected that they can't feel anything anymore. I hear every day this anhedonia, like I don't get pleasure in anything anymore. And part of it's because you've been burning out your brain with the zombie scroll and Instagram, which I'm guilty of. But it is one of those things that I think that when we get to into that sort of spiritual place where you don't have to know, like I will say that to people, like you don't have to know the reason why. You basically have, in fact, sometimes trying to know the reason why gets in the way of actually the actual healing, the actual vibrational healing that needs to occur. That conscious mind gets in there and gets in the way. And it's just like, can you surrender to this procedure and just allow it to be what it's going to be without saying, oh, it was this and it was that, and I need to find this, and I'm having issues with my mom or my dad or my husband or my wife or my dog or my skunk or whatever it is. It's really important, I think, for people to understand that you don't have to know. You don't have to know where you're going. You can just feel. You can just allow yourself to slow down and feel. And I think in this society, we get into this place where if you feel a negative emotion, if you grief, jealousy, envy, pain, whatever it is, you have to run away from it. You have to find a way out of it. So this, I think, when I see this sort of sound thing, it's like, no, you're kind of actually feeling your way into it rather than using it. Oh, I need to escape my anxiety, so I'm just going to do this sound therapy. Like it just becomes another cog in the wheel of this conscious drive that we have to fix everything with our minds.
I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head once again, which is especially me. I'm a very much a brainiac. I very much want
Me
to
too.
understand. I very much, right? You are too, obviously, the amount of knowledge that you've had
Oh,
to accrue, right? So I want to figure things out. I like to tinker with things. I like to figure out the reason why. And many of us are moving so fast that we don't get to lean into that intuition, that we don't get to lean into that gut instinct, that we don't slow down enough. And one of the things I absolutely love about sound and vibration is that it gives me an ability to slow down, to isolate, and to tune in to my own inner guidance so that I can feel and I can know through the feeling. Now, all of a sudden, I don't need to think it to know it, but in my core, I simply know I'm doing the right thing. I'm in the right place. I'm on the right path. I'm surrounded by the right people. This is the right place for me to be. And I can follow that and tune into it a lot more clearer.
Yeah, and I echo that too. I think it's just for a long, long time, I was very thinking based. I was very, probably just to put it into terms like 90% thinking, 10% feeling. And now I'm kind of like 60-40. And, I don't know if there is such a thing as 50-50, but at least now I know the combination and there's so much more feeling in life. Like even if it feels bad, being able to stay with that, not resist it, just allow it to be there and allow yourself to process it rather than running up into your head and trying to figure it out a lot of time, which is what I believe that we're doing in the society. So I think, sound is one of those things that allows us to resonate with ourselves and resonate with spirit. And I think you're doing amazing work, Craig. Like how do people find you?
I'm one of the most tangible people on the internet. Our website is I Am in Harmony. Two most powerful words in the English language. I am, because whatever you put after it, you are. So why not be in harmony with the world around you? I am in harmony.com. I'm the guy on the other end of our socials. All of our social medias in Harmony Interactive. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, X, we're everywhere. And I'm the guy on the other side of the comments. I'm the guy on the other side of the DMs. And my phone number is quite literally at the top of my website. So give me a call anytime. I appreciate you.
It's been great having you, Craig. I'm sure we'll talk again in the
Thank
future,
you.
and I'm interested in sort of following up this sound thing as well.
I would
So
love that. I
yeah,
really appreciate you, Doc. Thank you for having me.
yeah, of course. And just keep me posted on what you're doing. I'm really interested.
Will do.